Happy Thursday, everyone. My name is Todd Milbrand. I am the distribution sales manager here at Sangoma, and today we're going to be reviewing voice over IP security, specifically as it relates to using session border controllers. And for those of you that are not familiar with Sangoma, just want to give you a quick overview of who we are. We got started about 35 years ago, 1984. Started off just making boards that would go into servers to allow you to interface the PSTN with specialized software that you can then load onto a server and do different things with. We have obviously expanded quite a bit in those 35 years, not only from a product standpoint, in that we now offer full UC solutions, cloud services, IP phones, as well as network connectivity, which is what we'll be talking about today with the SBCs. But we've also grown from a financial perspective as well as an employee headcount. We're about a $150 million company, publicly traded on the Toronto Stock Exchange. We've got 15 plus offices, I believe, all around the world. Hong Kong, India, Germany, Spain, Italy, the UK, Ireland, Ecuador, Colombia, Toronto, Montreal. We've got stuff in Boston, Buffalo, Alabama, Atlanta, San Diego, everywhere. Probably about 400 employees right now. So grown from just a startup to a very, I should say very large, but much larger than we were in 1984. We've got proven financial performance. Look us up on the Toronto Stock Exchange. Not only do we keep growing, but we remain profitable as well. And today we're going to spend some time talking about security, specifically how overlaying voice onto your data network opens things up for various different types of attacks. The types of attacks we will focus on are voice over IP or telecom related, but keep in mind that as you open things up, you are opening up your entire data network. And we want to make sure you have that as secure as possible so that you can protect not only yourselves and your organization, but those that depend on your organization, such as your customers and your employees. So, the internet is almost like a utility now, right? It's completely vital to our day-to-day interactions with each other, how we do things, with everything that's going on in the world right now. Companies that never ever thought about having folks work from home are now either scrambling to get those folks working from home, or they're scrambling to put in plans just in case they need to have them start working from home. And all of that is dependent upon an IP address. Whether you're going to Facebook, Spotify, you're doing your personal or business banking, transferring files, and all of that is stuff that cyber criminals want. They want access to. They want to get onto your Facebook to, either try to steal your identity or get information about you from friends. I'm sure you all see the, assuming you're on Facebook, but you all see the post every once in a while. Hey, if you get a friend request from me, that's not really me. And what gets forgotten in all of this is that voice over IP now goes over the data network. I mean, not necessarily forgotten. Anybody implementing it or doing it knows it goes over the data network. But what does get forgotten is that in order to make voice over IP work in various different scenarios, you need to open up ports on your firewall. And if you open up ports on your firewall, you are opening up the entire world to begin port scanning you and doing various different things to try to gain access to your network. So it wasn't much of a threat back when we got started in 1984, right? Like, you had to have someone actually get physical access if they wanted to listen in on your phone calls or do something with your PBX. pretty difficult to do, right? Unless maybe you work there or you work for the phone company. But with the data network, when Al Gore invented it, which it's a joke, just in case you actually thought that I believed that Al Gore invented the internet. But when the internet was invented, ARPANET, everything was open, right? You wanted to, if you were a university, you wanted to be able to connect to other computers. Everything, it was like a utopia for like about 5 minutes. And then somebody realized, like, oh, I can go get information. I can go do this. I can, for fun, just shut down somebody's entire cluster, their entire network and everything. So firewalls evolved out of that. And a firewall's job is just to say, hey, you meet some rules that somebody programmed into me, you can come in. Or, hey, I don't see a rule for you. You can't come in. I'm going to drop this connection. And as things have evolved and we're now putting voice over the internet and you've got to open up those ports on your firewall, you are leaving yourself exposed to not only the different types of voice over IP attacks we'll talk about today, but your workstations, cell phones, laptops that your employees bring in that they may be connecting to, any data that might be on there, any of your customers' data in different databases. And it's becoming a bigger threat every day, right? Just on the voice over IP side, as far as cyber attacks, there's about $10 billion in toll fraud every year. And a lot of organizations, a lot of partners that sell our solutions or other people's solutions, they tend to think, that doesn't really apply to me, right? I'm a 30-person company in industry X. Why would a cyber criminal want to try to come in over my voice over IP lines and do stuff? Well, it turns out there's good reason for that. I think the last statistic I saw was 71, 72% of all attacks happen to organizations under 100 users. And the reason for that is pretty simple. They expect lax security. They expect it to be very easy to get in. And ideally, all they want is to get access to the same types of information that they try to get out of individuals, right? Why would I spend 6 months trying to hack GE and maybe or maybe not get in when I can go hack the local business right down the street from me? Of course, most likely it's not going to be right down the street from me. It can be anyone around the world, but I can get access to their customer base and get access hopefully to credit card numbers, all sorts of different information, as well as information from the users. Now, we've been talking a lot about opening up ports on a firewall. So if you want to add voice over IP outside of your organization, that's when we're talking about opening up these ports, right? We have plenty of customers that have put voice over IP premise-based phone systems in. Internally, they're still connecting to the PSTN. They don't have remote users. You have nothing to worry about there unless you're looking to change that, especially if you're looking to add remote users coming up here. In order to ensure that those folks can work from home, or if you're just looking to move over to voice over IP because you're sick of AT&T or Verizon, you're going to have to poke holes here. It is unavoidable. Unfortunately, firewall's not secure enough, right? It's doing a good job for all of your data needs. You program it as you need to. It will allow people in. It'll allow people out. Problem with a firewall is it was developed 30 plus years ago, not with no intent of real-time communications eventually going through it. It makes digital decisions, yes or no, ones and zeros. Now they're doing a good job. You don't want to get rid of them. But as you'll see as we go through this a little more, it's part of a security layer. And that's going to be the first layer as things start to go from being a WAN to a LAN. VoIP traffic has very, very different needs than what you would expect from other types of data transfers or other types of data traversing your network. I'll hear a lot from people. I don't need to look at an SBC. I've got this setting on my router for SIP ALG. So it's obviously SIP aware, and it's going to protect me. Not only is it not going to protect you, because it doesn't have the intelligence of an SBC, but most likely it's going to malform the SIP packets that are coming through. You're going to have very bad voice quality, and even worse, it can't do NAT traversal. So you're also going to have problems completing calls or making calls. In order to properly inspect data that comes through for voice and video and other real-time communications, you need a device that can actually inspect those packets, inspect what's coming through in real time. It's more than just, yes, you meet my rule, no, you do not meet my rule. It needs to be, I can look deep into these packets, I can look deep into what's coming through, and I can make intelligent decisions on whether or not what is coming through belongs here, needs to be blocked, needs to be dropped, or needs to be routed somewhere else. So we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about various different types of voice over IP or telecom fraud. I'm just making the assumption everybody's familiar with firewalls, everybody is familiar with the other types of fraud. Keep in mind, if they can get onto your network because you have open ports, because you configured things for remote phones or for SIP traffic, they can get access to all of your data and do all of those other attacks. I'm just going to specifically focus on stuff related to the phone system or to telecom related attacks. The first one I'm going to talk about is toll fraud. So a lot of people wonder, why would anybody want to do toll fraud, right? Voice over IP, this, that. Phone calls are basically free now, right? Who would want to hack into my phone system and make phone calls? That's ridiculous. The reason this exists is there are other places around the world where someone may own a telecom company, similar to like a small CLEC here in the United States. And that person may not have an agreement with various different carriers in other parts of the world. And what they want to do is they want to send lots of minutes and lots of traffic from those first world countries in other parts of the world where they don't have agreements, and then charge them an arm and a leg, right? And they will go to hackers and go, look, send me a bunch of traffic, send me a bunch of minutes, whatever those companies send to me, I'll give you 10%, 20%. Maybe it's just a flat fee. Hey, I'll just give you $1,000, send me traffic. And even if the bill that is rang up for, say, the end user is $10,000, usually, depending on the carrier, they'll reduce it because it was fraud and it was obviously fraud. Sometimes they won't. And then the carrier that was actually receiving the call in the other part of the world, they'll go to them and go, look, we know this was fraud. We're not giving you X number of dollars that you're charging us, but whatever, here's a couple thousand. So there's a huge market for that, right? People with time, some tools they can easily down off of the internet, and a little bit of knowledge can just send torrents of phone calls and minutes to these telcos and make some money off of it. So that's where that stems from. That's why that happens. Denial of service. So this is related more to the data piece, but keep in mind if you're going to get a denial of service attack happening to you, whatever IP that is being sent to, it's going to take down those tools. And if your phone system is at that IP, it's going to take down not only your ability to make and receive phone calls, it's also going to take down your unified communications tools as well with it. And a good security plan, as far as having various different layers, there's various services out there you can get that will intercept that traffic, drop it for you, and then only send you the clean data. You may have partial outages or brownouts in a situation like that, but it is a good thing to layer on top of all the other security that we've been discussing. It would not, my daughter's in high school, would not surprise me if I just asked one of her guy friends if they could do an attack on someone for me. At like, yeah, sure, $5. I'll download Kali Linux and I'll get it figured out. I've never done it before. It's not hard to do these things, but it is easy to take various different layers of security and add them in there, so you can make sure you are not only up and you are running, but you are protecting your data, that of your employees and your customers. Identity theft. This is the one that scares me the most. It's not huge right now, but with the way things have been changing here in the US, I'm anticipating this to become a much bigger threat in the next year or so. So we've all experienced the phone call from numbers we don't recognize. I know my favorite is when I get a phone number where the first 6 digits are the same, the area code and the exchange. And typically that's scammers and other types of people trying to get you to pick up the phone where you normally wouldn't because you don't recognize the number. And that has gotten a lot better. Part of that is from the phone manufacturers. Part of that is from folks that are at the carrier side. And new laws are going into effect to essentially eliminate that, right? Those robocalls of people just trying to scam you. And what that means is there's now going to be a huge need and want to get onto people's networks and make phone calls from their PBX, similar to the toll fraud stuff, but not because you want to send 10,000 minutes to some country halfway around the world, but because you want to make phone calls that look legitimate. And if you're poking those holes in your firewall or not doing these various different layers of security as we've been talking about, not only are you going to make it easy for them to do this, but people are going to be getting phone calls that look like they come from you. And not only think they're legitimate, but if they get scammed, if something happens through that phone call, they're going to be calling you wanting to know what's up. Like, someone from your organization called me and now there's $10,000 missing from my bank account. And then lastly, it happens. It's probably the smallest concern to the overall general business community, but it is a concern depending on what type of industry you're in. I know various different manufacturers here in the U.S. and North America, they do not want eavesdropping happening, right? They have competitors that are abroad in countries that are known for stealing intellectual property, and they do not want people having access to not only their networks, but they don't want them hearing phone calls as well. And those phone calls, all of that, that can happen in real time. You can use Wireshark to sniff out packets. Another thing I've seen is once you get access to the phone system, you start recording every phone call, and then you offload it elsewhere. And sometimes it becomes so much that it ends up bringing down the network because they're just offloading all of these recordings elsewhere. So if you are in manufacturing, you're selling a phone system to someone in manufacturing, or just any type of industry where this would be a concern, you're going to want to look into getting an SBC to protect yourself there as well. So we talked about all these various different things that can happen to you, including stuff not related to telephony. And obviously, with the title of this particular webinar, the solution is to put an SBC in place. It's a part of the layering you're going to do for your security. It does not go before your firewall. It does not replace your firewall. It sits after your firewall. And you're going to let it sit after your firewall with those holes poked, and you're going to let the session border controller make those decisions that need to be made so that folks cannot gain access to your network for any of the types of voice over IP fraud we've been discussing, or all of the other types of nefarious cyber attacks that you're more familiar with. Now, I also recommend, as part of the security layer, I know we have it within our phone systems, where if you can put in access control list rules, FreePBX and PBExact have a responsive firewall. That does not mean that you should not have a firewall, that you should not have an SBC. It means you should still, as part of that layer, as a last line of defense, enable those things and configure those things, so that if everything else fails, hopefully that one will be the one that doesn't. Now, remote workers, this is in the news more than it's ever been, probably the last few days. Remote workers scare me, even though I'm a remote worker. Reason they scare me is folks will put in all of their rules in the firewall. They will give access into the corporate network via VPN or various other different methods. But then they forget that the person working from home, I'll call her Karen or John or Karen, maybe Greg, probably isn't technical. They have a teenage kid at home doing who knows what on the internet. And at best, their security practice is, I just plugged in whatever the cable company gave me. That does not give me warm and fuzzies as far as protecting a corporate network, especially if you are the IT guy or whoever's administering the network thinks you are safe because you have implemented other things. It is not uncommon, or has not been uncommon for me over the years to get phone calls from someone or to get an email. You've got somebody working from home and they keep getting phone calls from extensions that don't exist. They pick it up, no one's there. There's no record on the phone system as far as any logs or anything like that. Then they start seeing it in the corporate network. That's because that cable modem is not the best security device. And Karen or John or Greg just became a window into your corporate network. Those phone calls that are coming through that nobody can find, nobody knows where they're coming from, because it's somebody getting in through that cable modem firewall. The one that is produced en masse with little to no, I shouldn't say little to no, but very little concern for security. It's there, rarely gets updated. The person at home doesn't know how to manage it or properly set it up. The guy in the call center answering your support calls doesn't know how to, unless you get to like a level 3 or level 4 person. And you now have another hole in your network. Now with SIP trunking, this is the primary one we've been talking about with SBCs. So where you're going to go and open things up. It's not not as predominant as it once was. A lot of SIP sessions come from the PBX out. So you're not necessarily opening up firewalls, but it depends on the carrier. It depends on how they're delivering it to you. If you are opening those up or you just want to be careful, you're definitely going to want to put a SBC in there. Beyond just putting this in so it can make intelligent decisions and protect your network, depending on what you're using it for, you can get additional functionality. With the big thing here being media transcoding. So if you're a hosted provider that's not protecting your data center, you can actually offload a lot of the transcoding that may happen between the endpoints and different carriers, et cetera. It allows you to increase what the PBX itself can handle. If you're not familiar with what transcoding is, just go back about 10 years and think about somebody sending you, say, a QuickTime video that wouldn't play on your Windows PC and you had to convert it to a different format. It's similar to that, except it happens in real time, and it's for voice. It's just different formats with different bandwidth requirements and different audio outputs. Another thing is SIP conversion. So if you've got SIP equipment from one of the proprietary guys out there, ShoreTel, who's now owned by Mitel, was notorious for this for years. They quote unquote offered SIP, but it was so distant, for lack of a better word, from the SIP standard that getting SIP devices or registering SIP trunks did not happen easily. So an SBC not only can give you protection there, but it can also make everything work like it should when you're talking about those proprietary big boys. Now, we have SBCs for everything from the small SMB. Actually, this SMB SBC, the 5-session, scales all the way up to 30 sessions or 30 calls. If you're a larger organization, you may start with the enterprise. All of these are field upgradable as well. So if I start at the 5, I can upgrade in 5-call increments up to 30. If I start at 25, same thing. And then if I start to get into what we call the net border SBC, which is meant for enterprises and small carriers, I can get that up to 4,000 sessions. And if this is something I want to virtualize, which I would say the virtualized SBC is probably our top seller at this point, I can get that actually up to 4,000 sessions. I need to get these slides updated. But we can take the ETH0 and tie that to the software licensing, and you can go away and run that in your data center, or you can even put it on your own hardware if you really wanted to. And if you just so happen to have one of those proprietary systems we were talking about, the ones that don't do SIP well, like Avaya, Cisco, Mitel, feel free to reach out to us about upgrading your phone system to Switchvox. We do have all features included. We don't provide, or our partners don't provide, any type of quotes where you're left scratching your head because there's about 70 different part numbers for a 20-user system. And with that out of the way, I'm going to begin the Q&A process. You guys are also going to see a poll here in a moment. I'm going to start to take a look at the questions that came through while we were doing this. Whoever corrected me that Brian Williams invented the internet, that is funny. Next question. Is there a software-based SBC so you don't need additional hardware in place? Yes, so we just covered that, so that probably came in before I brought that up. Another thing I want to mention here is if you go to our website, for SBCs, you can download a 2-user license so that you can demo the SBC yourself, play around with it. I like to combine that with Sangoma University. So if you go to our training portal, not only can you get trained up on all of our other solutions, you're going to join tens of thousands of other people that have, and you can go through the SBC one. And if you want to join up to one of our in-person ones, you can do that as well. See here, we got the SBC Essentials, and this is free. You can, if you have a portal.sangoma.com account, you can use that same login to get here. And you can go through this and use that software and use that license to take what you were learning in these little bites, right? So this one's 6 minutes, this one's 3 minutes. So you can either watch and plug everything in as you go along, or watch and then go plug everything in afterwards. Let's take a look at the remaining questions and get those answered. My PBX is offsite in a virtual server and a server cluster firewall, and my IP phones connect via VPN to the PBX. Do I need an SBC? I guess my question there to you would be that server cluster. I'm assuming you're doing SIP trunking to the server cluster, which means that you probably have some ports open there. So I'm less worried about anything that's going to be opened up on your at your main site, and more that people can get through to that if you have holes poked in your firewall for the SIP traffic from your carrier. SBC on a hosted system, is there a need? Yes, if you're the carrier, so if you're providing hosted services like we do with Switchvox Cloud, you're going to want an SBC to not only manage the traffic of the various upstream providers you may be using for dial tone, but also to protect that. And as we discussed, you'll get media transcoding and other features that would make that go a lot better for you. Now, if you're an end user, so you're getting the hosted PBX service, you're going to want to have an SBC on site because you're opening up traffic. You're opening up those ports so that the traffic from the provider can get through. You're going to be using either SIP gateways or SIP phones at your place of business in that scenario, which means you were going to have things opened up. Oh, somebody said Don Cherry invented the internet. So we obviously have some Canadians on the call. Thank you guys for joining us. And a whole bunch of questions have come in. So I'm at this point just going to see if anything is similar as far as questions. And what I'm going to do, holy cow. A lot of questions about pricing. I think you would be very, very surprised at the pricing once you look through that. But what I'm going to do, because there are so many questions here, and I'd like to keep these short, is I'm going to end this for you guys. I'm going to answer whatever questions I can via email. Anything that is good, I will ask marketing to send out with the slides for you. And anything I possibly can't answer, I'll have a sales engineer. And then if you do want to find out about pricing, when you go to our website, got chat, you can call into us, you can email us, you can fill out forms. and we can at least share with you the MSRP pricing. With that out of the way, I just want to thank all of you guys for joining us, and have a nice rest of your Thursday.